people in their 20s and 30s and even teenagers sometimes forget things, and that's part of being human. And as we grow older, those memory delays can occur more and more and can be more accentuated. And the problem with dementia is when that memory don't come back, or you don't get to the right answer, or you fail to recognize a familiar face or a familiar place or a familiar route to go to work or to go, shopping. So there are many kinds of dementias. So dementia is a big umbrella of all the kinds of memory loss diseases that we have. And the most common one is Alzheimer's disease dementia. Alzheimer being the last name of the first physician that described the disease in the early 20th century or late 19th century. I don't remember well. And it's okay to don't remember. I read it somewhere, you see? I'm doing it right now. So about 70% of all dementias are Alzheimer's disease dementia. So saying that you have Alzheimer's is the same as saying that you have dementia. But saying that you have dementia is not necessarily the same as saying you have Alzheimer's, because you may have another kind of dementia. Okay? So about 70% of all dementias are Alzheimer's disease dementia. About 20% of them are a mix between mixed type dementia and vascular dementia. Vascular dementia is the kind of dementia that happens to people that have had uncontrolled or undiagnosed high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, and there is undermining of the tissue of the brain. The health of the brain it starts to deteriorate, and eventually we have what we call microvascular disease of the brain, and if there is any memory loss associated with it, without the abnormal accumulation of proteins, which is Alzheimer's, we call that vascular dementia. But there is a big chunk of that 20%, 20 out of 100, that will have a mix between abnormal accumulation of protein in the brain, Alzheimer's disease, and vascular component. So high blood pressure, diabetes. Let's do a test here. And if you don't care sharing, how many of you have a diagnosis of high blood pressure? I don't believe it's that little. It's probably underdiagnosed or not diagnosed yet. Okay, how many of you have a diagnosis of high cholesterol? Okay. How many of you have a diagnosis of diabetes? Okay. So those that have a diagnosis of hypertension, high cholesterol, and diabetes, and is not well controlled, have higher chances to develop microvascular disease of the brain. That doesn't mean that you're going to get vascular dementia. It means that you have higher chances because of that. So this is why one of the things that we tell people when we are trying to prevent dementia or trying to improve the memory or trying to at least stay where we are with dementia is to control diabetes, control hypertension, control high cholesterol, exercise, eat well, don't drink too much alcohol, etc., etc. Okay? Not smoking is a big deal for vascular disease. So those of you that have smoked for a long time or are still smoking have higher chances to develop vascular disease everywhere, including the brain. So when the brain is involved in that vascular disease, it can be microvascular disease of the brain, or it can be vascular disease of the brain, which can involve, but not necessarily, a stroke. So when somebody has normal memory, have a stroke, and something changed, and that person is never the same mentally, that's categorized as vascular dementia. Okay? So that's why we say that vascular dementia is often abrupt in onset compared to Alzheimer's disease, bless you. Alzheimer's disease that is more slower pace, eventually you get to have memory loss, but it's not abruptly onset as vascular. So there you have 90% of dementias. 70%, 70 out of 100 is Alzheimer's disease, which is abnormal accumulation of protein in the brain. There have been some studies lately that show that people that have had problems with sleeping well and sleeping deeply, most importantly, have higher chances to develop dementia later on in life. So that's something that is new, has been in developing the last few years. It's not, you cannot see it in books or online that frequently yet, but I think that we will get there. So sleep is very important. And sleeping well is very important to prevent the dementia from getting worse or from the patient being delirious the following day. Those of you that are caregivers of people with dementia know that when they don't sleep well, they are probably more confused the next day. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so there is another 10%, 1 out of 10 people that have dementia that is not Alzheimer's, is not vascular, and is not mixed dementia. And those are the less common type, like Lewy body dementia, which is associated with Parkinson's. And some patients are categorized as Alzheimer's, but they have some Parkinsonian features. And there are some people with vascular have some Parkinson-like symptoms. So all this to say that it's not clear for even a regular physician what kind of dementia do the patient have. It sometimes takes several visits, unless it's obvious, until we get to the right diagnosis. There is not a test, a specific test, to a blood test or something to test for Parkinson's disease, for example. Sometimes you get to the Parkinson's disease diagnosis after you see that the patient start to develop some symptoms and some clinical findings that you can see in the visit that are stereotypical or typical of Parkinson's disease. There is questions whether Parkinson's disease dementia or dementia of Parkinson's disease has a higher percentage, but this is not accepted everywhere. In other words, you don't see that many patients that have Parkinson's disease dementia alone. You have patients that have Parkinson's disease, have normal memory, and at some point they develop dementia. Does that mean that is the dementia associated with Parkinson's disease, or is that person had also a stroke or has macrovascular disease because they have diabetes, hypertension, and everything I mentioned before, and they also have a form of mixed dementia that is not the common Alzheimer's and vascular? Are you following me in all this? It can be confusing, I know. That's why there are not so many geriatricians, because seriously, we are only 7,000 geriatricians in the United States. Can you believe that? 360 million people with an aging population. Baby boomers are about to be geriatric age, all of them here in a few years, and we only have 7,000 geriatricians. We used to have, when I graduated from residency over a decade ago, we used to have 7,700 geriatricians, but many of them have died, moved, retired, and there's no new people getting into geriatrics fellowship. As a matter of fact, there are many, many places throughout the United States that have closed training because nobody wants to go and do geriatrics. In part because it's not a sexy specialty. You know, everybody want to do the big box specialties, all the surgeries and anesthesia and radiology, can work from home, reading the radiology. Nothing against, my colleagues. We need them, but we also need geriatricians. So if you have anyone in your family that is thinking about going to medical school or in medical school or don't know, talk about geriatrics. It's a big opportunity there for us to take care of people that really needs the most. Because as you know, because of cultural issues, because of the way we are in this country, there is a lot of older adults that live by themselves, that have limited care, that have no kids, or prefer to stay away from family, which I understand sometimes. So those need more care from the healthcare providers and the healthcare system, and we unfortunately have not developed to meet that need. So if I can talk about that, in Blount County and surrounding areas now, we have the place that I'm proudly working for, which is Blount Senior Care Partners. We are the only place in Tennessee that I know of that is dedicated geriatric care. We are 4 fellowship-trained, board-certified geriatricians. From the 7,000, there is 4 here in Maryville. That is Dr. Catron. You probably know her. She's been around for a long time in the area. She does mainly outpatient geriatric care in the nursing facility. She's our leader. We have Dr. Kevin James, which is mainly a hospitalist, but he also has a small primary care clinic in the office. You probably know him as well, very well. He's been around like for about 10 years, I think. And then I joined 2 years ago. I do mainly primary care, so I'm the only 100% based in the clinic primary geriatric care. And there is a new doctor that joined last year. Yeah, last year. His name is Dr. John Creasy. He is from Maryville, and he kind of dropped in the lab for, we were not looking for somebody else, but he called and said, hey, I'm from Maryville and I'm graduating from fellowship. Can I go work with you? And we were like, yes. So we're 4 now. And ideally, we're going to continue to expand. And we have also about 20 nurse practitioners that are gerontologists. The difference between a geriatrician and a gerontologist is that a gerontologist is a non-physician that is specialized in geriatric care, and a geriatrician is always a physician, like a pediatrician, the other end, geriatrician. Okay, so I always explain it like that is the easiest way to explain. Going back to dementia. So the treatment we have today for the diagnosis is mainly clinical. We can do some imaging, we can do a CT, we can do an MRI, we can do these fancy CTs that check the activity of the brain, we can do a lumbar puncture. In real life, if you want to just take care of the patient and diagnose and treat, we don't need all that. We need a clinical evaluation by a trained physician or a trained gerontologist that can get to the diagnosis, and we need to start the treatment that is safe. The safest available is the pills that we use, and we have not had any other pills for dementia treatment for decades now that are effective. We have donepezil, we have Namenda, and we have a few others that we use, and we have a patch, the Exelon patch, and we play with them. We play with them meaning that we get to the right combination and the right dose for the right patient. Like most cases in medicine, right? What do we do when we're trying to treat blood pressure? We start you on a medication that is recommended initially, and then we check your blood pressure for a few weeks, and then if it works, great. If it doesn't, we change to another one, we increase the dose, we make you come back, we do blood work, repeat, do it again, repeat until we get to the right place. So in dementia, we don't have that many medications, we only have 3 or 4, and we play with those, okay? Unfortunately. Also, patients with depression and patients with anxiety have higher chances to have problems with memory, not necessarily meaning that they have dementia, okay? So if somebody has depression, can appear demented, but once we treat depression, that person goes back to normal. Have you ever seen that? Any family member? So we always hope that diagnosis that we get as possible dementia is just depression related, or is just anxiety related. And sometimes, not so frequently, unfortunately, we get to get the patient feel better and they are not demented, but eventually they will develop some kind of memory loss, because if we live long enough, we all get some kind of memory problems, like I said at the beginning. There are new medications, before anyone asks this question, new medications in the market that attack the amyloid plaque, some of them in the brain, and but they have side effects that I personally rather not to use that medication yet. I will not be the last physician in prescribing it, but I don't want to be the first one either, because I rather use what is known to be safe for the patient. Unfortunately, the medications that we have today do not regress the memory loss. They only hold the process of memory deterioration. In general, there's a few things that you can do that are non-medication related to treat dementia, and those are, as I said at the beginning, control your high blood pressure, control your diabetes, control your hypothyroidism is the other one that I forgot to mention. Also, stay physically active, walking if you can, at least 20 minutes daily for 5 days a week is what is recommended. If you smoke, quit smoking. Yesterday was too late. Alcohol drinking. So alcohol by itself, if you drink in moderation, is not really a threat for memory. That being said, this is cultural again. In other cultures, the culture where I come from, I remember having my first glass of alcoholic beverages when I was like 14, and that was okay. I was with my parents, and I have half a glass of champagne, and I got drunk. I remember that. And it's not child abuse, this is culture. If you travel in Europe, in Asia, many countries, and in Latin America, we got that from the Europeans, we drink since we're younger, so there is less of a taboo, so there is less alcoholism. In the United States, we make a big deal about it. We wait until we're 21, the ones that wait, and when they drink, they go bananas, right? And then, they have liver failure, and they crash, and they kill themselves. And so if you ask me, I'm just, for my cultural background, I can tell you that when you start to drink in a controlled environment, not saying that anyone should break the law, we need to go by the law of the United States, but making alcohol a big deal, a big taboo, is what makes us have problems with it. So drinking alcohol in adulthood is perfectly legal, right? Unless you're driving, don't do that. That's illegal everywhere in the world. If you drink already, you should try to diminish how much you drink to maybe a drink, 6 ounces of wine for a woman, and 2 drinks of 6 ounces of wine for a man. Okay? There is not too much description about liquor, because liquor is stronger and there is more issues with it. And I am a bourbon fan, but I try not to do it every day because it's not good for you. If it's good to increase the good cholesterol, that's the only good thing it does. But it can damage your stomach, it can damage your liver, it can make you it can give you what we call an alcoholic dementia, which is another smaller percentage of all the dementias. So alcohol drinking needs to be in moderation, maybe for your birthday, for Christmas, New Year's, if you celebrate any other holiday, but try not to do more than 2 drinks at a time. It's healthy until it's unhealthy anymore. It's like when you tell people, eating nuts is very healthy, and they eat 1 full can of cashews in 1 sitting. Well, that's not healthy anymore because those are thousands of calories you're putting in, so it's going to make you gain weight. It can give you diarrhea too. So limit alcohol, stop smoking, control your medical conditions, and take the pills that you're supposed to be taking. That includes the pills for depression. There are some medications that we try to avoid in older adults regardless. Those medications we try to avoid are, listen to this, benzodiazepines. Those are medications that were very popular for you guys. Most of the geriatric age people today, when you guys were in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, that was the pill to be in. The first one was Valium. That's the first benzodiazepine. And then after that, we have the newer generations, Xanax and alprazolam and temazepam for sleep, and all those medications play with your memory. They make you sometimes get confused, and they are linked to false. So they are a big no-no in older adults. Some patients have physicians, even geriatricians, that try to win them off and still give them a small count of pills of the benzodiazepines. I am in the ultra-conservative side. None of my patients are in benzodiazepines, unless the psychiatrist is prescribing it, and I still have the conversation with the patient. Should not be on a benzodiazepine. They are part of a big list that we have in geriatrics called the Beers criteria, where we talk about the medications that we should avoid in older adults. And benzodiazepines are one of the top 2 offenders, linked to false again, and also it can affect your memory. So benzos. The other one that we should avoid, although is more commonly used because it's a way we have to control pain, is narcotics. So narcotics are medications that we try to avoid in older adults. They are medications that we try to wean off from previous generation of doctors that will give narcotics like it was candy. And that's why we had the narcotic epidemic, and then we degenerated from there to the meth and to whatever kids are doing in the street nowadays. So narcotics are also to avoid, but not as much as a problem as benzos can be. All those still a problem. The other one, big one that I always talk about every time they have the opportunity, maybe one day it will be common knowledge this is a problem. Benadryl or Benadryl containing medications, those are Tylenol PM, I'm sorry, Aleve PM, I'm sorry, Motrin PM, anything PM has Benadryl, diphenylhydramine. It's a medication known to make people cuckoo temporarily. It can develop a psychological dependence, and it can make people fall as well. Guys, it can make you retain urine. Like if you don't have a big prostate, it wasn't a big problem. You can have a big problem if you, on top of that, take Benadryl or any Benadryl containing medications. I don't think that I'm forgetting any of the core things that I wanted to mention today. Those are the main ones. How long?